and the impact on our community's mental health and wellness. This is a silent struggle. I am Robert Asencio, along with my co host, David Magnuson, and this is The Silent Struggle, Episode 6. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with the mayor of the city of Sunny Isles, Larisa Svechin. Welcome, Mayor. How are you?
Good. Good morning. Thank you.
Under the circumstances, I want to say that I think of you as one of our silent heroes in this community, in our county. You are the mayor of the city of Sunny Isles, and you have a large population of Jewish community, as well as the Ukrainian residents, former residents.
hmm
Um, and you have been hit twice by what's going on in that region of the world.
Yes.
We want to talk about basically what has been the impact on your community as we've been working on this series to discuss and explore not just mental health, but the silent struggle that many in our community are going through and the resources that are available to them, as well as how is it manifesting itself. What do you think, David? When do we get into it?
Let's do it.
Mayor, we turn it over to you.
So, that's a lot that you're asking. I will say that it's regrettably very similar to when the war broke out in Ukraine. You have the challenge of so many challenges, but mental health. But it's not just access to mental health. It's access to mental health in a way that works for our community, right? And I think we spoke about this before. If you're bringing counselors or professionals to children or the elderly or anyone, and they don't speak their language, um, then it's useless, really. But it's not just about a language barrier. It's also a cultural barrier, understanding the nuances and really understanding, how do you speak to people from that eastern part of the world, really, and the Middle East. And like you said, we have, we're double hit because we have many Ukrainian former Ukrainian citizens who are Jewish, who have family still in Ukraine, in Russia, and many have in Israel. I think that the majority of our residents have at least one relative and certainly a friend that lives in Israel.
Mayor, what have you been seeing? What like how is the conditions of the war and the violence and everything back in their homelands affecting your community? I would think that it's weighing heavy on the members of the community. What are their
Well,
stories? What are they
uh,
sharing with you?
absolutely, and you see on social media, for instance, the Miami-Dade schools put out some posts about mental health resources, but I don't even know how to access those. And just if I look at my own family, and I try very hard to be careful about what I say around my children. My youngest woke up this morning and said he had a horrible nightmare. He had a dream that Code Red really happened at school. Um, and I'm thinking, he doesn't even have a phone, so he's not even seeing any of this on social media, and it's still, coming through. And so this is a sort of thing, and both of you certainly know, given your backgrounds, it doesn't hit you until later, almost, because I think we're all still in the state of shock.
Yeah, we were talking about this, David, and why don't you jump in here about the post-traumatic stress disorder and the onset that violence and exposure to just chaos brings.
We talk about it from a law enforcement point of view, stepping away for a minute. When Judge Leifman was here the other day, and basically, with what's going on, we see things that we should never see. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And some deal with it better than others. We've had our first guest, who was a chief of Miami, talking very proactively about his need or his substance ability to work through these issues by proactively going to see a psychologist and taking the initiative. Most people sadly don't do that, or they don't know they need to do that. The World Health Organization back in 2006 stated the psychopathological damage sustained by a victimized population should not be ignored. There was an issue there. That was back in 2006. They were working on some scientific studies following 9/11 here and the uptick of issues in the Middle East. That being said, with the post PTSD, it's known right now. As a matter of fact, with the PTSD, you don't have to be there right there. It's something that it can affect you just by witnessing it, and it doesn't have to be sight particularly. There's something called generational trauma, and that goes back. You can use the Holocaust as an example. People today might not have been there at the time, but the trauma that was handed down, the stories that were told, affect them. Same thing would happen right now. You have people in this nation and their family, whether it be in Ukraine, whether it be in Israel, it's affecting the people that are here.
Yeah.
And it gets progressively worse.
Is that what you call vicariously? Mary, you were talking about this, right? You were talking about the vicarious effect, right? Where somebody's here, a relative is here, and your family members or friends or people from your community are in the theater of war, and they're experiencing the effects, psychological, physical, emotional effects here locally. Is that what you're seeing up there?
Oh, absolutely. And, it's not just vicariously. And to your point, David, which is a very good point, the generational trauma is not, it is understood that it actually passes on without even sharing the stories. And if you have people, and we do, that are Holocaust survivors, and then were able to flee, and then they now are having to listen to this, or those that fled the former Soviet Union and have been in Israel, because many moved to Israel first and then moved here. And then I think of that elderly man that when I was in Hungary helping those Ukrainian Jews immigrate to Israel, right? We were bringing them to someplace safe. And I thought to myself, looking at his birth date, he was born at the time of World War II. He was a little boy, so he would have definitely remembered it. And he's dealing with the trauma of that, compounded by the trauma of the persecution during Soviet times, the war in Ukraine. And now I'm thinking about him in Israel. All those things connect us. And I don't know what's happening to him right now, but I can certainly understand how I can feel it. And I think that we all collectively feel it, whether it happened to us personally or not. There's a lot of very complicated things that are happening at the same time. And yeah, that it will become apparent in the weeks and months to come.
As a historian too, stepping aside from this a second, it's still going on with the Japanese American population on the West Coast, or where they have a predominance based on what took place in 1942 when they were put in internment camps. You were talking second generation Americans, Nisei, and so that is a very real fact for anybody that's been traumatized. Any group of people, you can take it down to the lowest level, a crime victim. It's just something that happens. This is on a much grander scale now. And no, the points you're making are spot on, Mayor. And how do you go about getting the people that are in crisis for what's going on? And this can get progressively worse moving forward. Hopefully not. But how do we get them the assistance that they need, or what can we look for to make sure or understand they're going through this sort of thing? It's not for one to say, well, people, why would they be feeling this? They're here. They're not over there. That understanding of that trauma, it transcends, and I think that's a very big point for people to truly understand.
Yeah, and that goes for anyone that's encounters some level of war. Mary, going back to shortly after Russia invaded Ukraine this time around, which was the latest one, which was the largest invasion of a European country since World War II, right? January 24th, 2022, you joined us, and then shortly after, we were able to speak to a lady who had immigrated to the U.S. from Ukraine, where I believe her name was Olga, where her children were outside in the yard as the tanks were rolling and bombing. How are they doing?
well, the last time I spoke to them, they're doing great. The kids have grown. Literally, the older boy that was much short, he's like ahead of me, very tall. They speak English fluently, as I thought they would. But emotionally, I don't know, and when we talked about this before, um, this this culture does not accept mental health as uh, as an illness or a sickness. If you go to see a mental health professional, you're considered crazy. And so they learn to cope, I'm sure, just like so many of us. But just I can't imagine, and I can't imagine how they're feeling right now. Understand, seeing that this is happening again. As a little kid, if that's your memory, it seems like there's always a war, and that is an unimaginable reality to have to grow up with.
The triggers, right? The PTSD. NIH, the National Institute of Health, estimates that about 20% of the population across the U.S. has some level of PTS or has an PTSD type episode. Doesn't mean that they're diagnosed. It just means that they have some type of episodes. Can you imagine somebody who comes from a war zone? And now we have the Jewish community as well, and those that are in the Gaza will be experiencing these types of severe impacted emotional wellness battles. So here we discuss the destigmatizing mental health. And what you just said is not just the example you just gave is not just relegated to the Ukrainian community. I think the Latinos, we suffer from it quite a bit, where our culture is not that accepting of mental health, recognition of mental health. And that's what we want to share with our community, is that there's help available. You don't have to struggle alone. You don't have to be alone. You're not struggling alone, that we can help you get through it. And statistics show that the majority of people who have PTSD can live productive lives if they learn how to deal with it. I think that's where you were going with Manny Morales, right? The chief.
Correct. Also, the recovery rate, as we've learned, is far greater than it would be for something like cardiovascular issues, diabetic issues. It's being able to come forward and get that assistance. What you're going to see here, if not already, and I'm talking about here in the communities, is an elevation of stress, anxiety, depression. Those are probably the three main fold right there. And each one, you can work with stress, but the other two, certainly, if they don't get treated, it's going to get progressively worse. And now, even what's going on there's an added fear component now, locally, statewide, across the nation, because of continued threats. And so that stress and anxiety, depression can be magnified. It's an interesting paradigm right now, but it does call for the ability to get the assistance you need. There's added fear. Getting the assistance is, and it may differ from backgrounds, but it's not a weakness, it's a strength. You mentioned something, Mayor, before. You used the word social media. And as much as the social media can be good, it's a double-edged sword in my estimation. Everybody seems to stay on social media, but then you're rehashing things over and over. Sometimes it's not truthful. You're getting different opinions, and there's a certain added component of confusion because of the social media, which certainly doesn't help those that are going or at the beginning or the onset of a crisis with the stress, anxiety, and depression. So I just wanted to, put that out there. Yeah. It's a good thing, social media, and by the same token, it's not such a good thing.
So, Mayor, I want to ask you a couple questions about, with every catastrophic incident or any type of disaster incident, we'll call it that, for lack of a better term, you have this outpouring of elected officials coming out and meeting with the community. But what advice would you give those that are viewing this, that are struggling, that are impacted by what they're seeing or what they're hearing or what their family members are experiencing in this trying period of our history? What advice would you give them?
Well, I'll start with myself. I've not been a very practicing Jew or one that goes to shul on a regular basis, but I can tell you it's moments like this that make you much more religious, and having a connection to something spiritual, whether it be your synagogue, your church, your mosque, whatever it is. I think that helps a lot, because the rallies that I've gone to, the one that I thought was the most, I don't know if the word effective is correct, but the one that there was a real connection with the people that were there, where I felt like everyone felt as one, was where there was no politician speaking. It was just the rabbis in the community talking about how important it is to stick together as a community, not just as a Jewish community, but as a community as a whole. And so I'm sure that there's a lot of people that feel very isolated, who may feel that, well, if I'm not Jewish, I really shouldn't be complaining or saying that I'm in some way suffering or stressed out about this. And I think that it's important for people to reach out to someone. And in the case of people that are Jewish, I would say a rabbi, because they have a lot of resources right now. And so does, so does the clergy in any religion. They do have resources. And especially since I know that the governor has now called for a state of emergency, there are now dollars freed up to help people in whatever it is that they need in response to this horror in Florida specifically.
Yeah, this is a human crisis, right? A human tragedy crisis. We interviewed the director of the Miami-Dade response team, and the for those that need help, that don't have anywhere to go, that they don't feel that they feel they're dealing with stress or the anxiety or depression or PTSD or otherwise not feeling right, they need help, should call 1-800-HELP-YOU. That's a mobile was a mobile response team.
Yep.
They in Miami-Dade County, they will respond. They will speak with you.
Can you repeat that for me?
1-800-HELP-YOU.
Okay.
We had the director with us, and she gave us quite an insight into their program. And I tell you, it's a unknown resource, invaluable resource to our community, and we want to extend that information.
They value privacy too,
Yes.
which is extremely important. That touches upon what you alluded to earlier. So yeah, they come out, they assist, and we were very happy with what we were learning the other day. It's a phenomenal operation they have going.
Yeah, I almost feel like we're speaking from the vantage point of people who have dealt with mental health, wellness, struggled to maintain our wellness throughout our careers, David and I, right? So we want to make sure that you know that the doors are open to talk. I love to share the experiences of the community, but we need a better understanding, I guess, of what your community, the people that make up your community are feeling in order to be able to tell their stories. I think we often forget about that, and I'll never forget what you told me after the what spotlights dim, after we've had a few days or a few months of constant bombardment of information about this, and we get tired, that these stories tend to fade into the background, and we need to remember that we can't allow that to happen. Remember that?
Yeah. And I was actually just thinking that yesterday, that history regrettably repeats itself, and I think that potentially this is a coping mechanism that we have, because you can't possibly be on this level of bombardment of this sort of information and continue to your everyday life. So at a certain point, I think that you reach a peak where you just can't take anymore, and then you just tune out. And so it's really incumbent upon people that can help keep the information going, but also to help people understand that just because it's no longer on the news doesn't mean that, you know, it went away. And for those that continue to need help, that they should still seek it. You know, we as a city are being very careful in how we are presenting information, because we want people to donate to reputable, you know, nonprofits. You know, unfortunately, a lot of bad actors come out of sort of these sort of things and prey on tragedy, which is horrendous. It's like a double whammy. So yeah, our community is gonna not forget this, because we have so much. You know, I'm on a chat, for instance, with my family in Israel, who are really throughout the entire country of Israel, and so I'm getting these up to date, you know, texts of, you know, oh, a bomb just went off here, a bomb just went off there, something that I would have never really even paid attention to in the past, despite the fact that these things have been happening in Israel forever. But now I'm super attuned to it, and so it's really upon me to share that information when I get it, because there's just so much misinformation, and then eventually, because it's not so such horror, people are just gonna stop paying attention.
Do you have any organizations that you want to promote here that are reputable, right? Because we know that the scam artists, this is South Florida, they're plentiful, and they will seize no op, they will not pass on seizing an opportunity to take advantage of people.
Yeah, the two that come to mind are the Greater Miami Jewish Federation and Jewish Community Services. And the reason that those two are two of my favorites is because they don't only service the Jewish community, despite the word Jewish in their title.
Mhm.
They help everyone. This is the case with helping with food, helping with mental health, and they're very, very big proponents of mental health services for anyone. This is a big deal. Another one that comes to mind is Hazdala, and this is an ambulance. I guess you would call it service. These are all volunteers that have been highly trained, and if you are in a state of emergency, this is mostly a health emergency, they will come to your home, and you don't have to be Jewish, and they will help you. So those three, I would say, are the primary ones: Greater Miami Jewish Federation, Jewish Community Services, and Hazala.
Thoughts?
I mean, these are sound words. This is where you can get the assistance you need. Reach out. But I think the watchword here is reach out as certainly as needed. Again, with what's going on right now, the one thing you don't know at this point is when it's going to subside or if it's going to intensify. So those people that are in or that crisis mode, there's avenues to go down to perhaps lessen what they're going through, and hopefully, you know, the sound words of the mayor will go a long way and set them on that course. It's a tough time.
Yeah, sadly, I'm going to be more of a pessimistic today. I'm usually an optimist. I don't think that this is going to die down anytime soon. We have, again, the war in Ukraine continues to rage on. You know, we need to be cognizant of that. We need to also be cognizant of what's going on in the Middle East and what's going to happen in our country, right? What are the consequential acts that we don't know what's going to happen, right? But they will happen. If there was a time to remain united, this is it. Find unity in cause and commonality of humanity. This is it. Mayor, we have about 5 minutes in this segment, because I think that what I like to do, since we're running the series, I like to discuss with you more, coordinate with you more on this topic of mental health and wellness moving forward, because you're an invaluable voice to our community. You're invaluable aid to our community. But right now, while we have you here on the show, in the here and the now, give us some words of wisdom from your point of what's going on. What do we have to look forward to? And how can the community help you and your city moving forward?
I think one of the biggest dangers that we have is fear. And I see it in my community. And fear creates, there's side effects of it. People do crazy things when they're scared. And one of the things that I noticed is people are either afraid to speak about this because they're afraid to say the wrong thing and ask the wrong questions. And there are Jewish people that are afraid to be recognized as Jewish. And so we're all kind of in this high, tense, stress level mode. I think that we need to talk to each other, and we need to be patient with each other, and accept the fact that sometimes people may ask questions or say things that you would normally find offensive or misunderstand. And patience and understanding that we all come from the same place. We may look a little different, we may pray a little different, we may speak different languages, but we are ultimately connected. And I see that in my community, February 22nd, and I see it, now October 7th. I think we probably have more languages in one, 2 square miles than anywhere else, and potentially than the entire United States. And we're able to keep it together because we understand that our differences make us stronger.
Yeah, no doubt. Strong words, very, very heartfelt.
Sunny Isles is a melting pot. It
Mhm.
is a microcosm of everything of Ellis Island, of the statue. It really is. It's a microcosm. And good people, or kindness, transcends all races, religion, what have. Good people are good people. I will say this, Mayor, as a Jew myself and a proud Jew, may your Shabbat be one of immense pride. And I certainly appreciate the words of wisdom I heard from you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And not to discount, because it's very, very valuable, the interfaith community
Mhm.
that I have been working with for the last 10 years. That spans from Christians to Jewish to Muslim to you name it. They seem to work pretty well here in South Florida.
Mhm.
Maybe we can serve as the example to the rest of the world. But you know what, Mayor? I'm going to tell you, as a person who's served in the military, a person who's served as a police officer, I would ask you to be cautious and vigilant, and just continue to do the work that you're doing. But please, please continue to pay attention to your community, as I know you do, because there's a lot of help that they need. I think we all need it right now.
Mhm.
So, on that note, can you give us some parting words?
Well, I want to make sure I say Shabbat Shalom to David and to everyone else who observes Shabbos. And if there are people that need help, even if they believe that there isn't someone that can speak their language, they can still reach out. The number that you gave is fantastic. I'm sure that there's an opportunity there to find someone that can help them. And our community, because again, very, like you said, very proud and not necessarily willing to ask for help. I urge you all to just know that we are all really in this together, and that we have to rely on each other to find that strength.
Great. And on that note, part 1 soon to be followed by part 2. We'll talk offline. To those of you who joined us, thank you. We can't thank you enough. We've been speaking with the mayor of the city of Sunny Isles, Larisa Svechin. I got that right this time. She is one of the silent heroes in this county, has been dealing with catastrophic effects of war in her city for the last better part of a year now, 2 years. So our hearts and prayers go out to you. To the Millers, thank you so much. Andres Pena, our producer behind the scenes, thank you. Drop us a line. Let us know what you think. We'll see you the next time. Thank you. This has been a show.